So last bit on the bottom end is putting the drive gear for the oil pump back in there. That's where it sits. And on, like I said, on the 16 valves, that is just for the oil pump. On the 8 valves, same shaft, same everything else. It's just a distributor in there. But the one difference on these is between the 9A and the 6 and the KR. This has a sort of a sister, I suppose you'd call it, where that centre section moves in and out. There's a little grub screw on the side there, so that holds a bit of pressure, nothing major, just on top of the gear to keep it in its place so it doesn't float up and down too much. And on the KRs they don't have that, it's just a cap that blocks the hole and that just sits on there. So a couple of little subtle differences, but that's just engine sort of improvement over the years. So I'll lube that up and get that stuck back in and then start on the cylinder head. So there we go, that's the gear, just some lubricant on it. And the higher part, where my finger is, that goes down first. So it sits in that way. So we do, plop that on there. It's on the gears. There you go. And then you can see then the auxiliary shaft turns, which in turn turns that gear, which in turn turns the shaft, which goes down to the pump. And inside the pump, those two gears turn and cause a suction, drawing the oil from the sump into the oil system. So that's that there. And then the top hat, it goes in there. Only calling it top hat because it looks like a top hat. That just sits on top of there. Bit of pressure on there. And then your clamp, 30mm bolt, like that. So that's the remainder of the block done. So now we're getting with the head. Right, so now we're going to move on the cylinder head. As you can see from the pictures, it's a bit of a mess. Before I move on to that as well, you may have noticed I haven't put that back in the sump. That's just the sort of factory winders tray kind of thing. That won't be going back on because I'll have a proper winders tray in there, and I'll be doing a baffled sump like I've done with the 1.9, so there's no need for that anymore. Just before I forget, right, as you can see, that looks a bit disgusting. It's just dust mess where the water's been sat there. But what we're going to do first is get the cams out, so all these valves are then shut, and then I want to clean these up and test, see what the valve surfaces are like, whether they're sealed or not. Now, inside this was really clean actually, quite surprising, but it was really good. So as you can see inside there, lovely and clean, no problems with that in the slightest. I'm not sure what camshafts these are, because this is a early KR cylinder head, and the difference between you've got an 027 head, which is the part number. The part number sat just here, and this is an 027 head. You've got an 027, an 051 and an 053. The 027 is the earliest one, and is sort of regarded as a better cylinder head, because in the inlet ports, in the later heads, they had a different casting where they had a coolant path in between, the gap between the valves. But in sort of road trim, minor port and polishing, 3-angle valve seats, you wouldn't really make much difference, to be honest. So whichever head you got will do the job. As you can see there, that's far too much slack in that chain, so that chain's past it. But they're in like 10 quid, so we'll change them anyway. So I'm going to whip the cams out, put them out the way. I'm going to check the part numbers on them to see what camshafts are in them, because this could be a KR head and KR camshafts where it's been put on the 9A bottom end, or it could be the KR casting, which did come on the 9A engines, but with a slightly lower profile cam. So we'll come to that when we pull it apart. that's what you're left with once the cams are out. So again, keep all those in order. Cams laid out, chain, that'll go in the bin. Part numbers and these, you've got 027, and then sections there, and there's another code in there. So I'll dig in later and see which, see what cams they are. There's no wear in those cams, they look really nice. Nothing to worry about on those. So what I'll do now is pull these out, and these are the cam followers, which are literally, you can see they're quite a bit of wear on them, but they'll be getting changed anyway. There's no point keeping them. These are very, they get, when they're pushed down, there's a little spring inside, and when I can't remember which way, whether rather down or up, oil pressure can go from the cylinder head into it. So inside there is a cushion of oil, and obviously if you've got disgusting oil going through, plus I've had water in this and all sorts, I don't know what's inside that. That's quite soft as it is actually, which shows there's no oil pressure and it's just on the spring. So for the sake of 80 quid, I'd stick some new ones in there, because that can cause a lot of problems. If you've got like that, doesn't feel like there's any resistance in that spring, where that one there, you've got a lot more. I mean, you can clean them out, but to be honest, the mix max I've got in there and the oil that come out of it, I'll just be happy putting new ones in there. So I shall now pull those out and turn the head over and then start on that side. Easiest way I find getting these out, pair of pliers or a little sucker thing. Simple as that. Bit of pressure, and that's all they are. They've got a ring round the side, and there'll be a little oil hole in there. There you go. That's the oil passage in there. Again, it's just a spring inside. So I'll pull it out. And then once they're out, you're just left with the top of the valves. So what I'm going to do now is spin the head over and show you what we do on that side. So this is the other side of the cylinder head, which looks disgusting, but all this needs is a quick clean up. So I'll do that now with a bit of thinners, white spirit or oven cleaner, whatever you got, and a stiff paintbrush. Right, as you can see, that's cleaned up lovely. Yeah, it's just dirt and carbon build up those black bits. So what we're going to do now, we've put the spark plugs back in, put the head roughly level, and all we can do now, just use some kitchen cleaner or whatnot, fill these up to the brim, all of them, and leave it for a while, because what I want to see is if these valves are actually seating as they are, because then that's what gives one good indication of how good the state of the head is. Because if the valve seals are okay now and they're all sealing, that's not a problem. When they get machined for the out valve seats, they can use the valve seats that are already in there without having to change them straight away. So I'll just pull it in and just see how they're sealing. It's also a good test if you think you've got a head gasket gone, you've got the head off, you can do a simple test like this. Spark plugs in, fill it up. If you've got one of them that leaks out, you know one of your valves is leaking. So I'll fill it up now and see what we got. So that's all the fluid in there now, and nothing's dropping drastically. So that says to me the valve seals are nice and strong, which is good. Yeah, so happy with those, not a problem with that. A few bubbles moving around, but that's just because the liquid I've used. So that's cool, don't need to worry about that. And now what we need to do is take the valves out. But what I'll probably do is leave that to another video. You've got enough done tonight, so I'll spin this back over, get those plugs back out of the way because they're disgusting, and have a look and see what cams are actually in this head. There's another handy tip with these heads, or any head where the spark plug is quite far down. Now normally on your spark plug sockets you get a little rubber grommet in there so the spark plug sticks in there. If you haven't got that, use an old HT lead, cut it off, or a bit of rubber tube, just push that down the bore, a bit tight on there. Squeeze it over the end of the spark plug, and you can see it just grips on there, pulls it out. So again, saves a lot of time messing around with trying to get a long nose pair of pliers or something down there. Whoop. But yeah, if you're going to change HT leads, and you've got one of the ones like these where it's got a longer sort of head in it, you're going to be looking sort of that long. Get the old one, cut the HT lead or use it, stick it in your toolbox. It's very handy for getting things out like that. So the last little thing I showed tonight, again, good way to clean out oil wells, kind of squirty stuff. Stick it in the randoms in there. There you go. Good surefire way to help make sure your oil wells are all clear. So handy little tip again. Doesn't have to be WD-40, but as long as it's got a tube on like that, very good way to help clean your oil wells out, because you don't know what's stuck in there. If there's a bit of something stuck in there and there's no oil getting to that side of it, that's going to dry out and to cause massive problems to your camshafts. Same with anywhere in the engine, got to have oil somewhere.